Ashley, and today I'm continuing my series on perspective and watercolor painting. So this week we are going to look at curvilinear perspective. So let's go ahead and just flow right into the conversation. So curvilinear perspective, it basically is a very complex type of perspective that uses 5 vanishing points. So in prior videos, which you can check out that playlist, it's all organized there for you. But in prior videos, we looked at atmospheric perspective, 1, 2, and 3 point perspective, and then forced perspective. But this is definitely the most complex in terms of the geometry of the 5-point perspective. So some examples of this would be like, if you look at photography, you have fisheye lenses and wide angle lenses. Both of these produce kind of opposite, but curvilinear perspectives. And so you'll see if you look up photos of those, you'll see a curved horizon line and all of the verticals are kind of bending around the scene. And so it is a very dramatic look and can be very whimsical as well. So that's kind of some of the key uses for this curvilinear perspective is when you're trying to get a sense of the expanse of space. A wide angle curvilinear type perspective can really amp up that drama with the expansiveness. And then you can do the fisheye view, which is gonna like make it feel like cozy and curved in on itself. Things like reflections in spherical objects like doorknobs or, crystal balls, stuff like that, also is a good example of curvilinear perspective. So the main characteristic of curvilinear perspective is that all of the lines, it's right there in the name, are curved. So your horizontals and your verticals are all going to be curved around the scene. The key to grounding it is to make sure that the center of the composition is more stable and grounded, and then everything around it is bending. And that's going to give that viewer's eye a sense of rest and, again, grounding right there in the center. And then that's what makes it work. So a couple of examples. Now, historically, this is not something that was used often in like master painters and stuff like that. But MC Escher did some fantastic architectural drawings of utilizing curvilinear perspective. So 2 examples are hand with reflecting sphere and balcony. So the hand with reflecting sphere, you can see it has literally a hand holding a sphere, and then the scene is actually reflected in that sphere and it's all bending around and gives that kind of fisheye perspective. And then you have the same thing with balcony, where it's very interesting because the whole scene around it is all drawn to kind of normal perspective. And then right in the center, there's that sphere that's very dramatic and emphasized, and it's all distorted. But that sphere is curvilinear perspective. And he just does it so precisely and it looks so mathematically correct. It's really amazing on these drawings. So kind of like I said before, some areas where curvilinear perspective might be used, some different subjects you might want to use this perspective for would be like sprawling urban scenes. So it would really capture that sense of space and wideness, right? Or like a cozy interior that you want to, maybe it's like you're looking through a peephole at an interior and it's nice and cozy and curved in on itself. It also is great for like whimsical scenes, like children's books, things like that. Also for kind of fantasy sci-fi scenes. So any of these are good options for applying curvilinear perspective, but you can use it for anything, and it is just something that's kind of fun to play with. So if you look at the technical application of this, I already said you have 5 vanishing points. So there's 1 central one, then there's 2 on the horizon that are off center. They're not straight on the horizon, they're bent. And so then the lines would curve down or up to those horizon points. And then there's 2 vertically as well that are either going to be farther apart or closer together. So you curve in or you curve out. Now you can certainly go that way if you want to try to be really precise. I am not that person. I would not probably actually draw that all out because it would just be too many lines and I wouldn't like it. So I kind of just play with it and figure it out, you know, and generally make it right. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's watercolor. It's loose and flowy and washy, and you can use that to your advantage so that it doesn't have to feel so precise, but it will still add that sense of drama and whimsy. So a few little sketches that I did here show this example. So I'm not sketching these on camera just because it would take a little while, but this kind of shows that fisheye perspective where everything's bending in toward the middle. So, you know, your vanishing points on the horizon are gonna be down this way, and then your vanishing points on the verticals are in toward the middle, and so everything's curving toward those. And then this one is another kind of fisheye view, but think about like looking through a peephole, okay? So this is like looking at an interior room through a peephole, but down. I don't know why the peephole's up so high, but that's okay. So you can see all of these lines, everything's curved around this center. So the center of this table is fairly square. It has very subtle curves, but that's kind of the grounding point. And then everything is curving in toward it. So you have your walls and your couches and everything, okay? And then this is more of your wide angle lens view. So this is, you know, if you pull up a reference photo, you can find wide angle photography, and the horizon bends down, and then everything on the outside curves toward the outside, and then the center stuff is straight, or mostly straight. Okay, and so the key is not to just tilt things, but to actually have curved lines there. If you just tilt them, you can do that, but it's not going to be that curvilinear perspective. It's going to be just a little bit more surreal. But for the curvilinear perspective, all of your lines are going to be slightly curved. So we're going to take this center one and I'm going to translate that into a painting. I'm drawn to this one. I like it the best. So I'm gonna get my sketchbook out here and then get my paints woken up. I'm just using cerulean, permanent rose, and yellow ochre. I don't really know what colors I'm gonna make this room, but that's my limited palette for this whole series, is just those three colors, and I can mix anything out of them, browns, neutrals, whatever. So we're gonna do it on this page over here. So I'm gonna rearrange a little bit so that we can see it. There we go. And I'm gonna start by just drawing a square, a grid here. Not a grid, a frame. Okay, there we go. So I'm gonna keep my drawing contained into this frame. Now, what we're gonna do is we're gonna start with kind of that grounding element. So I'm gonna start with the center here, and I'm gonna do my table, and I am curving the lines just slightly. They're not perfectly square, but they're mostly square, okay? And then I'm gonna add in a little bit of 3-dimension here, so getting the sides of the table in. And then we're gonna put in legs. Okay. And this is gonna be a super quick demonstration. It's not gonna be extremely precise or anything, but just to get the idea, okay? So now I'm gonna add in the back wall, just because that's where I feel like going next. And this is gonna curve around, okay? And then here is like an opening that goes to maybe some doors here. And that's gonna curve. So everything on this side's gonna curve this way, and everything on this side's gonna curve the other way, okay? So we gotta make sure that that's dramatic enough that it's obvious that that's what we're doing. Okay, so let's say that's a door. We'll put a tree and maybe some grass out here and stuff, but let's put in a horizon line here. Okay, there's the horizon line. Now we're gonna have a couch here. So I'm going to curve the base of the couch around. Okay. And then the front of the couch, you're going to see, and it's also going to be curved. Okay. So these are going to curve up and then around. There's the front of the couch. Our side of the couch, our armrests are curved. So basically, the key to curvilinear perspective is right in the name, curve. Got to make sure everything is just curving around. And that will get you that, that sensation that it's all angling and, you know, that fisheye perspective. Okay, so there's one cushion, and then here's another cushion. Might be too forward there. Okay, and then our last cushion here comes around. Okay, other arm of the couch. Then I'm just gonna kind of make some curves here to make the cushions look like they're actually cushions. Okay, so there's our first couch, and we're gonna put like it's in a corner here. Okay, so there is the wall. And I kind of want to bring this down farther so that the couch lines up with it. So let me do that. Okay, there we go. Now I'm going to put in like a console table or something over here. So I'm going to show it going out of the frame, making sure that my lines are curved there. Okay. Comes all the way out like that. Okay. And then there's the top of it. And then it's going to have a lamp on it. Okay, so the lamp is also going to curve in. And so it's going to give that sense of drama, right? So all of these lines just curving toward the center. And it feels like it would fall over, right? But because it's that everything's curved, it fits. It doesn't look out of place. If I just put that curved, it would be kind of more whimsical and unrealistic. Okay, so then now I'm going to put the couch here on this wall. So that's also curved there. Here's the top of the couch. And the back of the couch, you can see a little bit of. And then I'm just going to put in some cushions here. So the middle cushion is going to be mostly straight. So I'm going to get that one in first. And then we have our side cushions, which are going to curve in toward the middle. Okay, so there's basically our drawing. Okay, so I'm going to lighten up that sketch now, and then we're going to paint it very simply. This isn't going to be a really detailed painting or anything, but the key is that we want to make sure that we're kind of emphasizing the roundness with our shading. Okay, so you want to make sure that we're getting some shadows in there and emphasizing that roundness. So I'm going to just do like a warm walls, I guess. yellow. Kind of paint all of the interior this warm yellow color. And then I'll go back in and add more color in a minute. Okay, so the walls are yellow. Now we want to make sure we're getting a little bit of shadow on some of the walls. Okay, so we're gonna add a little bit of pink and blue to our yellow to mute it. Okay, so it's just a little bit less vibrant. And I'm gonna make this wall shadowed because if the light's coming from the window, then the wall that's got the window on it isn't gonna have as much light. Okay, there we go. And it's all wet on wet, so it's all gonna bleed, but I don't really care, first of all. And second, I'm impatient and don't want to wait for everything to dry, so we're not going to. Okay, so then we can add a little bit of shadow behind the couch on the ground. This is a very monochromatic room, okay? So the floor is going to be the same color as the walls. Maybe it's not the best interior designer, it's fine. We're going to add shadow under the table here. And then out this way a little bit. Okay. And then maybe just a little bit of shadow under this table. There we go. Okay, so you can see that's already kind of lifting our items off of the page, and we've done basically nothing. So that's kind of fun. Now I'm gonna do blue couches. That's really bright blue, so I'm gonna take just a touch of the yellow and just a touch of the pink to mute it. So that basically adds orange to my blue. Okay, and then my couches are all gonna be that color. So I'm gonna start by just doing a wash of color over them. And then I'll go in and define the shape after with some shadows. Okay, so it's just a blue blob right now. All right, let me paint the outside a little bit. So we're gonna have cerulean for the sky. Just a little bit more in there. It's gonna be subtle, nothing crazy. And then I'm gonna make some green to do some grass. Now that grass looks really flat because it's just all one value. So I'm gonna lift some at the back to lighten it up. Let it kind of blend with the horizon a little bit as well. And then add a little bit more darkness and warmth to the front. And that just uses our atmospheric perspective, which we talked about in the first video, to kind of push that a little bit more deep by having that gradient. It's not perfect, but it's fine. And then I'm gonna put a tree here too. Don't know what kind of tree it is, but it's very muted green. Okay, put a little bit of yellow, a little sun-kissed on the edge there, and then a little bit of kind of a cleaner green, blue-green in there as well. Okay, make it a little bit more brown. It's kind of a purpley brown, but that's okay. And add in a tree trunk. So my tree trunk is gonna be bending into the frame a little bit as well. Okay, so it's curving just like the rest of our scene. Okay, now I'm going to use that same brown to paint my console table and my coffee table. Okay, just adding a little bit of darkness on the side here while it's still wet to get those shadows in. Same thing on the table legs, just to make them a little bit darker. And then not very much water, and add in the sides of the table with a little bit of shadow as well. Now again, it's all gonna bleed, and I'm just not that worried about it, but in reality, I would wait to add some of these shadows probably until it was dry, but it does emphasize kind of the looseness of it if you do everything wet on wet. So it depends what you're looking for. Come back to my shadowy yellow and add a little bit more under the table. There we go. A little bit more here too. Just the closest to all of the things. Okay, now we're gonna go to our blue, which I have to remix because I am just using one well basically here for everything. Okay, now this is a lot thicker paint, and I'm gonna add in my shadows. Just a little bit, and then get some water and blend it out. Then I'm just basically kind of sketching around where I put those cushions and things to pull them out a little bit. Do the top. There we go. Good enough. And then same thing here, just a little bit of kind of sketching in those separations on the cushions, getting very subtle. This is basically mostly lit, so it's just some very subtle color transition there to separate the sections. Maybe the top is not as dark as the back, but darker than the cushions. So I'm going to add in that wash, and then I'll darken the back a little bit more. And then I'm just going to add in some dark color to frame the window. So I'm just mixing in thick paint here, trying to get a real dark color. Doesn't really matter what color it is, but just that it's dark. Okay, so that's kind of a really dark gray. Tap off extra water, and then I'm going to frame the window with that. Okay, put a little door handle, and then I'm going to use that same color for the base of the lamp. Okay, little bit of that color for the shadow of the lamp. There we go. And then lampshade. Will be blue, kind of like the couches. It's a little bit more purple, but that's okay. Here we go. Okay, so that's basically curvilinear perspective. And it's the very simplified version of curvilinear perspective. But you want to choose kind of, you're still choosing reference or vanishing points, even if you're not formally defining them. So I chose that everything was going to be curving in. You could have chosen everything curving out, and it gives a different view. So, you know, basically, once you make that decision, just make sure that everything's following it. And as you get farther from the center of the scene, it's going to be a more dramatic curve than when you're in the middle. So that's something that's kind of the key here is make sure that the center is a little bit more stable, more realistic, more proportional. And as you move away from it, you get more dramatic. That center will ground the viewer, and then that outside edges will add that drama. So I really hope that you enjoyed this example of curvilinear perspective. I hope that it kind of simplified it for you, because this one is, definitely the most complex if you look at it formally in terms of the geometry of it. So it can be very simplified though. One thing that I definitely recommend is look up either fisheye or wide angle views, and you can just look up, wide angle photography or fisheye photography, and you can see tons of different examples. You can go to open stock photo websites if you are concerned, about the copyright issues. But if you're just practicing in your sketchbook or whatever and not planning to use it, just go to Google. It doesn't matter. Google images or photography books and things. If you're just practicing, you can use them to start to learn and develop an eye for these different perspectives. And it is really fun. I've actually never done a fisheye view before this video. And so this I really enjoyed, and I hope you did as well. So if you did, let me know in the comments. I would love to hear from you. If you have tried this before, I'd love to hear your struggles and your successes. We can just start a conversation. Also, like the video, it really does help, and subscribe for tons more. The playlist for this whole perspective series is going to be linked right now, and I hope that you enjoy it. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, keep those paints flowing.